All right, well, welcome to Australia, Bedros.
Thanks, man.
Fantastic to have you here.
Yeah.
So you're out here, you've left home, and it's not easy to obviously leave, leave the businesses, leave home, come over here. It's been a rapid fire trip. You're traveling around the world. You've got, presentations day after day. You've got podcast after podcast. What's your driver for doing so?
I believe that we all have a gift. I believe that that gift has to be shared with the world. And the greatest disservice we can do to humanity is not share our gift, our message, our life's experiences and lessons. And so I've learned that early on. Like, the most selfish thing we can do is to not share our gifts and lessons. And so I know what my gifts are. I've gone through lots of trauma. I've gone through learning lessons. I've built multi-million-dollar companies. I've impacted lives. And if I can travel the world and share that, then I'm doing my mission, my purpose as a human. If I don't do that, then it's probably the most selfish thing I'm doing, because all these people that I could be giving information to, that they can time collapse their goals and their results, they're not going to get that information until they have to learn the lesson. So if they can learn it through my mistakes, through my experiences, why not?
Yeah, now you said that you need to share your gift, and it's a disservice to humanity if you don't serve that gift.
Yeah.
How does one identify their gifts? Because you're very clear on what your gifts are.
Yeah.
It's sharing your experiences.
Yeah.
It's teaching.
Yeah.
It's connecting with people. And so much so that it drives you to, do long days, day after day.
Yeah.
How did you uncover that gift?
It takes time and experience. And so when you think about what is wisdom, right? Wisdom is time compounded by life experiences. And so one thing I always tell my son and daughter, Chloe and Andrew, Chloe is 16, Andrew's 18, early on in their lives, I instilled in them to say yes to the adventure. When you say yes to the adventure, in other words, hey, do you want to go surf? Yes. Do you want to go do this? Yes. Do you want to go climb mountains? Yes. Do you want to come and try this event? Yes. Do you want to try this new food? Yes. When you say yes to the adventures, you're having experiences. You compound that by time going by. And I'm 49 now. I turn 50 in a couple days. And I realize the way you identify your gift is you heal, you transform yourself, you become the highest version of the self that you can be. And then through time, you realize, oh, while I have all these things that I like, I believe this is my gift. This is my message to the world. And my message to the world is this, that we're all going to have trauma. We're all going to deal with adversity. That's the human condition. Only dead people don't have trauma or adversity. The rest of us do. Heal from it, learn from it, develop more compassion, more gratitude, be a kinder person, and then rewrite your life story. Like, we all tell this story about ourselves. Like, oh, I used to be a fat kid, and I've never been in shape, and I guess I'll always be fat and clumsy or dumb, or I'm forgetful with names, or I'm not good with money. Okay, all right. Rewrite your story. As humans, we're so pliable. Rewrite your story, create a new identity, and then when you create that new identity, go out and share that part of your identity with the world. Now, I'm good at a lot of things, but I'm great with sharing the message of healing, transforming, and then gifting yourself to the world. And so through time, I realized while I'm good at all these things, the one thing I'm really great at is this thing. And so that's the thing you share. Oftentimes you'll see people who, social media has done this, they haven't had time, they haven't had experiences, and they decide that I'm going to be a life coach, a business coach, a financial coach. It's like, well, you're 22 years old. You haven't lived life, right?
Yeah.
That's
the experience part that you talked about.
Yeah, I got more life in one finger than a 22-year-old kid does in their whole life, right? And so they haven't lived life. Or you look at someone who's a financial coach, but they're living like a destitute bum, right? Instead, stop saying what you are and actually become the person, right? Become the person. And then when you do, I believe our creator, the universe, will kind of bestow this wisdom on you. People ask me, like, dude, you never have PowerPoints. Joan always tells me, my assistant, you're never preparing for your talks, yet you get standing ovations, you get $50,000 to speak. How is it? I go, well, I've got enough time and experience where when I take the stage, I just channel source. That's all I do. I'm just a vehicle to channel source, whether it's God, the creator, universe, whatever you want to call him. I'm just a vehicle for it. But had I not put myself through the trials and tribulations of healing, of overcoming, of rewriting my story, of letting go of my past, and I don't think God or the universe would speak through me. But if if I just said, you know, I'm going to play it safe, I'm not going to do any healing in life, I'm not going to acknowledge the trauma in my life, but I want to be a motivational speaker, it's going to look fake. That's why we all see these fake phonies out there on stage with their goofy little PowerPoints and stuttering over their words, feeling uncomfortable, translating that discomfort to the audience. Now the audience is uncomfortable with seeing them on stage. It's because they're fake and they're phony and they feel like imposters, because they are.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so become the human that you're supposed to be, and God will speak through you to an audience.
I've been following your journey for a long time, and really what we've seen this huge ascension in terms of your brand, the popularity, the followers, and you really stand out in amongst a lot of, you know, speakers. Do you believe it's because you've done that, you know, 30 years of hard work on yourself? It's the experience component. Do you believe that has shaped you and has given you what you need to stand out in this busy marketplace, in this busy world when it comes to social media, and create this audience, this following?
1,000%. For example, we can take a bar of steel and look at it. It's heavy, it's crude, it's hard, but you can't really appreciate it. Now, if you put that steel into fire and wait till it turns molten red and take it out and start hammering it and hammering it and hammering it and back into the fire, take it out and start hammering it and shaping it into a beautiful sword that's sharp, that's smooth. Now you hand that same steel to someone and they go, holy shit, they can appreciate it, they can value it. It's the forging, the hammering, the over and over, the repetition and the heat that forges a human as well, right? So we all start off as this just clump of steel. And while you can go, okay, this is heavy, this is hard, I understand what it is, you can't really appreciate the beauty in it. Now, when you're forged and you have battle scars, metaphorically, sometimes physically, you just come from a different place. You're built different at that point. Like, I've killed the old version of me, and the version of me that exists now is a version where I literally have outside eyes on me. Like, as we sit here, I feel like I'm sitting there watching us with outside eyes. Whereas before, the 1.0 version of me was constantly wondering, what am I saying? What am I doing? Am I saying the right things? Is he getting the information that he needs? I know you're getting the information you need. Your audience is getting what they need because I've got enough life experience that has proven that. And so the forging is necessary. Being the trial by fire is necessary. But it's also uncomfortable, man. Like, the financial troubles that I've had, the contemplating whether I'm meant to be an entrepreneur or not, questioning whether you're a good father or a husband, because look at the state that I've gotten my family in, where we might have to sell the house and go move in with my parents. You know, I've had these conversations 20, 21 years ago with myself, but then I've gotten myself out of it. So I've built a track record of success that is undeniable. And when someone has been forged, they have undeniable evidence that they are the man or woman they're meant to be, they gift that person to the world.
Well, let's talk about that. You said you killed the 1.0 version of yourself. A lot of people will know you now. You're a best-selling author. You've got, you know, over 1 million fans on Instagram. You've got just an incredible podcast, YouTube channel. You've got rooms full all around the country here in Australia. Let's go back to the 1.0 version 15 years ago, all right? Because a lot of people don't know that, Bedros, all right? Who was he?
Well, that 1.0 version of me was this. I knew I wanted financial freedom. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. But I also,
always know that?
I've always known that. I knew that I was unemployable from the time I got my first job.
Sounds like me.
Yeah, right. And I knew that about myself. I'd get fired from every job that I had, and I knew there's always a better way of doing that job, and sometimes when I would come up with a better way, I would think that my boss would be happy about that, and they'd be like, this is not how we do it this way, Bedros. So I was like, oh shit, got it. And then soon I would get fired. And so I knew I was unemployable. I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew I wanted freedom. I knew I wanted to have life experiences that were, like, I knew there was levels to it. I didn't know where the levels were, but I knew there was levels to this life. And I wanted to have the best experiences, stay at the best resorts, best hotels. When I travel to Scotland, I stay at Edinburgh Castle. I want to fly first class and private. I want to have the nicest automobiles and the nicest experiences for my family, because I am a foreigner to the United States. I'm an immigrant. You know my story. I come from the Soviet Union. And so having eating out of dumpsters when we came to the United States, English being a second language for me. It's not my primary language. The fact that, we lived in government-assisted housing, all those things made me feel like I'm a lesser human. So the 1.0 version of me was dying to become a successful, financially free person who can give his family a better life than he did. But I hadn't turned pro yet. Stephen Pressfield has a great book called Turning Pro. And he talks about the amateur has these aspirational goals, like he wants this freedom and he wants access and he wants the reputation and the recognition. But yet I was disorganized. I was drinking alcohol, not necessarily like a drunk, but a pro doesn't drink. A pro doesn't stay awake till 2 a.m, binge watching television. A pro doesn't hit the snooze button 3 or 4 times just to sleep in a little longer. A pro doesn't cut corners on his work. A pro doesn't fly by the seat of their pants. A pro is structured, man. He's a scalpel. You know what I mean? He's a scalpel, very precise. And I realized I was living a life of amateur, but wanting a pro life. And that's the 1.0 version of me, where I was cutting corners. I was treating my body like a dumpster. I was staying awake too late, waking up too late, not structured and organized, impulsive, emotional, poor communicator, a horrible leader. And I knew that if I wanted to have this other life, the 2.0 version, I would have to kill off the 1.0 version, the amateur. And it took 3-4 years of therapy, of hard work, of self-awareness, of books, of coaches, of mentors. Because the original mentors that I hired back in the day were marketing mentors, sales mentors. So I was making good money, probably made my first $1 million within the first couple of years of being an entrepreneur. But to make the type of money I'm making now, 9 figures, have multiple companies, hundreds of employees, that takes turning pro. And it takes killing the old self. Yeah.
And so that was your inflection point. You always had the desire. You always knew deep inside that you were meant for more.
Yep.
But yet your life didn't mirror what it needed, what was needed from you.
Correct.
And so you had to turn pro and go from 1.0B to 2.0B.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And if we don't do that, and everybody has their own journey of that, right? Everybody has their own journey of that. As I speak to these audiences and we do the meet and greets and we're talking afterwards and they're like, man, your podcast helped me stop drinking. Your podcast stopped me from pornography. Your podcast helped me take my life serious and I can actually start making money now. Saved my marriage, whatever. Like whatever the version of themselves that they have to kill to become the version of themselves that they want to become, you could only give birth to the 2.0 version when the 1.0 version is dead. Not dying. Dead. And to kill 1.0 version means you may have to have less association with old friends who don't align with the 2.0 version. You might have to edit and eliminate certain family members who are toxic to you. I don't speak to my brother. He's my older brother. In the Armenian culture, the older brother, like
revered, right?
Oh my God,
yeah.
Right? Like he is the head of the household. He's the head of the clan, with the exception of the patriarch and the matriarch, my mom and dad. But I knew that he was a incongruent human in terms of the values that I wanted to carry, and I had to distance myself from him.
That must be so hard.
Yeah, but it's what I'm willing to do to have and become what I need to become. And who's willing to make those sacrifices? I'm very brutally honest with coaching clients. Like, if you're married to crazy, you are not going to become the man or woman that you want to become. So you either have to help your wife or husband see the sanity and how they have to be to support you in your life's mission, or you might have to be part of that 57% divorce rate. And that's okay. Like, I am ruthlessly driven to become who I have to be. I will take anyone with me who's willing to go with me. But if they're not, I must kill them off.
Yeah.
Metaphorically, not literally.
Now, you mentioned a few times already, and you're very open in your podcast about speaking to it, that part of that 1.0 version to become the 2.0 version was doing the deep work on yourself. You had to open up some wounds. You had to get some therapy. It was more than just learning the skills itself. The skills were not enough.
Right.
How important has that been for you?
It's the death of the ego. So there's the death of the self and the death of the ego, right? And the death of the ego is, all right, well, I can learn the skills of marketing, of selling, of writing good copy. But the healing happens when you kill your ego and start accepting brutal honesty from friends people you truly trust. And you can't go, yeah, but I'm that way because this happened to me. Because look, I was molested as a young boy over and over again by 2 older boys in Armenia. Then when we came to the United States, I was beaten up by gangbangers because I was the immigrant foreign kid who didn't speak English. And when you're foreign and you stand out, kids want to beat you up. And I've had a lot of trauma and adversity in my life. Well, I could either ignore that and pretend it never happened, put it in a box and put it away, which is what most men do. We compartmentalize.
Absolutely.
But let's not be foolish, man. It shows up in everywhere in our life. It showed up in my relationship. It showed up with how I led my kids. It showed up with how I led my organization. It showed up with how I treated my body. I was an emotional eater. Like when I was stressed out at work, today I have a very different way of dealing with stress. But when I was stressed out at work, I would get home 6, 7 p.m. at night from the headquarters, and I would eat half a dozen bagels. I'd snap them in half and I'd dip it in cream cheese and eat it. I'd probably eat 3,000 to 4,000 calories standing up at the kitchen buffet. This is after dinner. So now you've put on 30 pounds of weight, yet you're trying to run a fitness franchise. You don't look like the man that runs a fitness franchise, so you feel incongruent, you feel like an imposter, you feel like a hypocrite. So yes, you can learn all the skills you want to make money and to market yourself and to build your brand, but you also have to kill your ego in order to be able to heal your inner child and in order to be able to move beyond the story that you tell yourself subconsciously, which is, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I'm broken. And when you do that, you break through this glass ceiling. There's a great book out there called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks.
Yeah, great, fantastic.
And he calls it, all of us, every one of us have some kind of a glass ceiling of success financially, success maritally, success physically. And as you heal and develop into the better version of yourself, you raise that glass ceiling. And the goal is to break that glass ceiling, because if we don't, what ends up happening is, and your listeners will relate to this, you have this invisible or glass ceiling and you start making money and you're getting yourself out of debt, you're starting to have a new life and you're actually enjoying it. However, you start pressing up into this glass ceiling and it is uncomfortable because you've never been there before. And subconsciously, you believe that you're not worthy of it.
So you'll sabotage it.
So you self-sabotage. Bring yourself back down to the 1.0 self who is in debt, who's struggling, who's back against the wall. You didn't want to be there, but subconsciously, it's a more comfortable place to be. Now, if you can address the things that create this glass ceiling and break through it, you can actually surpass that and have the life that you want without sabotaging yourself back to it.
And we really all should hit that glass ceiling at some point in time.
Of course.
Because we're always trying to evolve into that better version of ourselves.
Yeah.
And so for those listening, watching, you know you're hitting that glass ceiling when you are sabotaging, that you do have those behaviors. It might be bagels, it might be pornography, it might be alcohol, it might be drugs, it might be cheating, whatever it may be. But they're behaviors that indicate, hey, you've got to do the deeper work here.
Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. But what we do is we turn a blind eye to all those behaviors. I recently had this epiphany, and I realized, when do most people make the greatest amount of change in their life? It's typically when they hit rock bottom, right?
Yeah.
Like someone, let's say they've been a functioning alcoholic for years, and then one day they're at the bar, they overdrink, they get in their car, and they smash into people. They kill a family of 5. They're going through this lawsuit. They almost end up in jail. That's rock bottom. Their spouse leaves them. They hit rock bottom. They go, that's it. I'm done. I'm giving up alcohol. I'm going to do something about it. I think we have to hit rock bottom as quickly as we can in order to start healing.
To do that rebound.
Yeah. What most people are really good at, and I was the king of this, is we see those little indicators like you talked about, right? The pornography, the alcohol, the overeating, the escaping with video games and social media, television, whatever, sports, whatever the fuck it is that you use to escape your reality. That's even worse than hitting rock bottom. It's almost like you figured out how to maintain yourself just above rock bottom, where you're suffering, you're always anxious, you're always depressed, you're always overwhelmed. The conversation inside your head is like, do I belong here? Am I even worthy? It's like you're white knuckling through life. The only worst place than rock bottom is being right above rock bottom. And many people live there for months and years before they hit rock bottom. I'd assume, because listen, when you're just above rock bottom, you're lying to everybody around you. Oh, I'm fine, I'm not drunk, I'm good, I don't have alcohol issues. Now your breath spray and bubble gum, and after you drink, you're trying to stay away from people so they don't smell your breath. Like it's a fucking chore for the alcoholic, the drug user, the whatever, the overeater, to maintain that state just above rock bottom. Like, it is overwhelming, bro. Because when you hit rock bottom, you go, hey, you know what? I'm a recovering alcoholic. I've been lying and cheating all this time. Oh God, it feels so good to get it off my chest. Now I'm gonna go get help and become a better human. Like, it's almost freeing to hit rock bottom. So many people just levitate right above rock bottom and avoid all those indicators that you mentioned. They don't avoid them. They hide from them. They escape from it.
They justify them.
They justify them. Oh, mine's not as bad as his.
That's right.
Oh, okay. I remember telling my son one time, the first time I spanked him, he was 7 or 8 years old. I felt horrible about it. And I've taught my son and daughter to be very vocal. Like, hey, say what's on your mind. And so a couple hours later, he came down from his room and he's like, hey, Dad, I don't believe that I deserved the spanking based off what I did. I believe that you're stressed out. Mom says you're stressed out at work. And I basically got a spanking because you're kind of in the red, right? I was like, son, you know what? You're right. I'm so sorry. And then I went to justifying. I said, you know, your grandpa, my dad, you should have seen the beatings that he would give me. At least I didn't do that, son. And without even losing a beat, he said, well, that doesn't make the spanking that you gave me right. And he was absolutely accurate.
So aware and so insightful for a 7 or 8 year old boy.
Just because I can justify the fact that what I did to you is nowhere near as bad as what my dad did to me doesn't make that right. Right, doesn't make a difference. And so we do justify. We do make excuses, and we need to stop, and we need to acknowledge it. And we need to have friends around us who don't necessarily allow us to get away with it, but call us out on it. And we were talking about Craig Ballantyne earlier. The first decade of our relationship, of our friendship, of our business partnership, all we did is call each other on our shortcomings, and we elevated quicker in life.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. That's the sign of a true friend,
Yeah.
who can tell you what they think, what they feel, and because they care and they love for you, and not worry about the repercussions. Am I going to hurt B by this? What's interesting, you said you had this epiphany where really the true change happens when you hit the rock bottom. How can we, for those listening, do they need to hit rock bottom for that true change? No, that's the thing. But you also have to have your ego defenses down enough to realize that you're lying, you're cheating, you're faking your way through it, to go, oh my God, this is why I'm feeling anxiety. This is why I'm feeling depressed. This is why I feel so overwhelmed. It's because I'm white knuckling through this process so no one finds out the truth. And it's painful, man. It is hard. I read a book by Norman Vincent Peale. And the book said, he went on to say, for every lie you tell, you have to tell 15 more lies to cover that one up. And for each of those 15, you have to tell 15 more. For each of those, you have to tell 15 more. You could see how that place right before rock bottom is just fucking overwhelming. So no, you don't have to hit rock bottom, but you do have to let your ego down, have outside eyes on yourself, and go, you know what? I'm done with this. It's time to start healing. You don't have to hit rock bottom. It's just, I think sometimes we hold ourselves there just above rock bottom as a way of avoiding the realities that things aren't right in our life. And avoiding that deep work. And there's a few things that you said there is, obviously self-awareness is paramount.
Huge.
Enormous. Having great people around you to also shine a light on some of those behaviors is paramount as well. How have you developed, you're very self-aware. How have you developed that skill of self-awareness?
It goes back to the first thing we talked about, experience and time. There's a bell curve. I forget what the name of it is. It's they call it the confidence curve. Basically, when you start something new, you think you're better at it than you really are, right? And then you get injured, and you go, and then you're safer. So I'll give you an example. Have you heard of the one wheel? You know what the one wheel is?
Yes, yeah, yep.
It looks like a skateboard, but it's got one big motorized wheel in the middle, right? My son got a one wheel a couple of years ago. Because I surf, it looks like you're surfing on land. I tried it, I loved it, I got myself a one wheel. And because, now remember, do you surf?
I don't, no.
Okay, so when you're surfing on water, if you wipe out, you're falling in water.
Yeah.
You're good. If you're surfing on land, you wipe out, you're hitting asphalt, right?
It hurts.
Yeah, and so I very quickly got good at the one wheel. I got so good that my confidence exceeded
Your
my abilities, right? And then I was bombing a hill, going down a big, beautiful grassy hill on this one wheel, carving. I saw a root and I thought I could bonk off it. It's called the bonk. Man, the one wheel went one way, I went the other way, and I tried to run it out. My knee went pop and I tore the meniscus in my knee. Now, I'm 49 now. This was 2 years ago at 47. 47, your body's not as resilient and it doesn't recover as quick, right? But all of a sudden, once my knee healed up, my skill level and my confidence matched, right? And so we need to get there. And so we oftentimes think that self-awareness is a byproduct of falling on your face and realizing that you're not as good as you thought you were. You know, people in the States, I don't know, here in Australia, the culture is not too gun friendly, but people in the States will buy a gun, a pistol, keep it in their sock drawer or in their safe, and they go, when the bad guy comes, here's what I'm gonna do to get them. Listen, when the bad guy comes and you hear a break of glass or a door being kicked in, you're gonna poop your pants. If you haven't practiced, rehearsed over and over and over again, that gun is probably gonna get used on you instead of you using it on the bad guy. But we have this false confidence about us. And so we have to be able to bring down the ego walls. We have to be able to understand that, all right, self-awareness is a byproduct of seeing, what am I really good at? What do I have false confidence about? And if you can lower the thresholds and make them match, confidence and skills match, you become pretty self-aware. Another way to develop self-awareness is to ask people that you trust. Craig Ballantyne is someone who I trust, who I love. I know he wants the best for me, and he's brutally honest in delivering feedback. And it wasn't always fun hearing the feedback from him when he would say, hey bro, why are you, because we would run masterminds together. And I remember in Las Vegas one time, we were at the Bellagio. We had dinner with our mastermind members, about 100 mastermind members, and they were gonna go party somewhere. And I said, Craig, you wanna go party with them? He's like, no man, I'm gonna go to my room and go to sleep. I'm like, you're a pussy, right? I went and partied with them. The next morning, I was late to the mastermind. And he goes, why are you late? I was like, man, I was trying to catch up on my emails. He goes, well, I woke up 2 hours ahead of you and did all my emails, cleared everything out, showed up prepared. I mean, he just let me have it. And I realized in that moment, I showed up hungover. I was a few minutes late. I was trying to catch up on emails. As I look back now, those emails were probably poorly done, right? And all because I was acting as an amateur. And so to have a friend call me out on it and say, you don't have a morning routine and you just fly by the seat of your pants and one day this is gonna backfire, and he was absolutely right. And so to have friends around you who can help you develop self-awareness, which didn't feel good when he told me that, but I was like, you know what? I know he loves me, he wants the best for me, and he does have a great morning routine. He's never stressed and overwhelmed and running behind. I am. Hey, you make a good point, Craig. What can I do next? And he helped me develop a morning routine. And so self-awareness is part experience, life experience, and falling on your face enough to get those battle scars. It's readjusting your confidence and skill level where they match. And it's having friends and community around you who will give you the feedback. While it doesn't feel good, it's necessary.
But you are also open to hearing it.
And you have to be open to hearing it, yeah.
And that's absolutely pivotal.
Yeah.
Craig is a great mutual friend, and he just tells things straight down the line, and I really appreciate him for that. He's told me, many similar things, and but you got to take it on board.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Now, one of the things that you've mentioned already is that you came from Armenia. You're an immigrant. And I would say you have what Gary Vee refers to as the immigrant's edge.
Yeah.
All right. And for those listeners, those watching that don't know what the immigrant edge is, it's a unique set of advantages and perspectives that immigrants bring to their personal and professional lives. And it's a combination of hard work, gratitude, adaptability, resourcefulness, hunger, and also they've got strong support systems as well. Now, you came from Armenia, you've got this drive, you've got this hunger, you've always had that, it's unrivaled, but you're also incredibly grateful as well. And you talk about that gratitude a lot.
Yeah.
How important has the immigrant edge been for you?
Massive. I'll give you a great example. In 2008, the housing market crashed in the United States, right? One of the biggest financial crashes in history. Some say even bigger than the Great Depression. So 2008 housing market crashes, the economy crashes in the United States. In 2009, I come up with the idea of Fit Body Boot Camp, our international fitness franchise, right? These gyms that are group training boot camp style. So that's in 2009. By 2010, me and my one videographer were filming content videos to start promoting, selling the idea of franchising Fit Body Bootcamp. And we're like 4 videos in, and he literally turns off the video camera and looks up over the camera and looks at me. He goes, Bedros, who are we doing this for? I said, Rob, what do you mean? He goes, the economy has crashed. Unemployment is at 12%, highest it's ever been in the country other than the Great Depression. No one is spending money, yet you're about to start selling a franchise, a Fit Body Bootcamp franchise. Like, who's gonna buy this? I said, Rob, the economy to me is better than ever before. If you know where I come from in Armenia, the unemployment rate is 26%. And someone like me, at best, would become maybe a cab driver or working at a garage as a mechanic. Look at the opportunity I have. And quite frankly, Rob, while the economy has crashed, money hasn't disappeared, it's just exchanged hands. I just need to figure out who the money went to and start selling my franchises to them. And then he literally, before he turned the camera back on, he goes, you know what you have? You've got the immigrant edge. And so before I ever heard Gary Vaynerchuk talking about the immigrant edge, Rob Yeager, one of my videographers, told me this back in 2009.
Yeah, wow.
He goes, man, you've got the immigrant edge. And I said, whoa, stop. What do you mean? He goes, well, my granddad is from Italy, and he had that same mindset as you. Things in Italy were so bad, the economy was so poor, opportunity was so little. When he came to Ellis Island and saw the opportunity the United States has, even though they were headed towards war, even though the economy was bad in the United States, it was still better than what he experienced in Italy. So he was like, man, well, look at all this great opportunity I have. So it really depends on the lens that you look life through, right? There's an old parable that says there's a shoe company. I don't know if you've heard this. The parable goes like this: it's a shoe company, and they have door-to-door salesmen selling shoes, right? And so they take one of their salespeople and they send him to a remote island in the Pacific. And he lands in the remote island, and they go, your job is to sell shoes in this island. Just tell us how many shoes to send over. So he goes and he's talking to the people, to the locals, and he realizes they're all barefoot. Talks to some person, they're all barefoot, no shoes. He goes and finds the one payphone on the entire island, calls back to headquarters and says, send an airplane, send me back. People here aren't gonna buy shoes. They're all barefoot, right? So they send him back home. They send another sales guy over to the island. He lands and he starts looking around. He sees they're all barefoot. Goes right back to that one payphone, calls him and says, send every shoe you guys have in the warehouse. I've got opportunity galore. Same company, same shoe company, 2 different perspectives, right?
And that's very, very apparent just in those videos you were making. You were looking at it through a very different lens because you grew up in a very different environment and economy and circumstances, and you saw opportunity where others didn't.
Exactly, yeah. In fact, during that time, and you'll appreciate this, I mean, you're an entrepreneur, you run Facebook ads, etc. I remember when I started to run Facebook ads to sell Fit Body Bootcamp franchises, I was paying less per click than ever before, because when the economy crashed, everybody contracted and stopped spending money, which means the money that I was spending, I was getting more leads and more opportunities for every dollar I was putting out there. And so I realized, like, this is the best time. Like, my competitors aren't even marketing anymore because they're holding onto their purse strings. I went all in on it, and it just blew up.
Do you believe you can be successful without that immigrant edge?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think if a person has enough hunger, enough drive, enough resilience, resourcefulness, and they need to be stubborn as fuck. Like, I will will the universe to work and collude in my favor. Like, I will just be so stubborn. I will will the universe to bend to my needs. You have to be pig-headed and stubborn as an entrepreneur. You don't have to be born in a third world country like I was, but you do have to have a high level of resourcefulness, resilience. You have to be able to eat shit every single day and keep asking for more. You have to have the ability to turn chicken shit into chicken salad. You have to have the ability to take criticism and negative feedback and say thank you very much and keep going. Sometimes I wonder if that's factory installed in people, because I coach a lot of high-level entrepreneurs. Many of them are born in the United States, massively successful. If I didn't know it, I would say they've got the immigrant edge. I don't know if it's nature or nurture.
Yeah. Is it innate or developed?
Right. Maybe it's a combination of both.
Yeah.
But I can tell you that I've instilled that into my son and daughter. Obviously, they've grown up wealthy. They've never had to fly coach or regular class. We're always flying first class or private. We have a full-time housekeeper, we have a chauffeur, and all these things. Yet I've instilled the ability for them to be resourceful, resilient, to keep eating shit and ask for more, because I have intentionally put a lot of pressure on them and forged them by doing small things, like as they were children, little babies, whatever Christmas gifts they got, birthday gifts they got, pick one, we're donating the rest, right? Come outside in the backyard, help me change the sprinkler pipes. Now, I could afford an entire lawn company to come through, and now that they're older, I do. But when they were younger, I made sure that they're out there getting dirty with me, doing the things. So I gave them an immigrant life by design, right? I showed them that, see those seats way in the back that don't recline and turn into beds? That's where everybody else sits. Right now, mom and dad are paying for these awesome pods that you get to sleep in. But when you are an adult, you're likely going to be there unless you can add enough value to the world to be here. And our full-time house manager, her name is Marlon. You like how Marlon picks up your underwear and cleans it? Yeah. You like how Marlon keeps the refrigerator stocked with all your stuff? Yeah. If you don't make enough money to have a Marlon, you or your wife or you and your husband are going to be shopping, changing light bulbs, taking out the garbage, washing the dishes. I brought the reality of life to them, because otherwise they would think that every household has a Marlin. Every household has a Hugo, a chauffeur. I can have that because I've lived the immigrant life. I've lived in government-assisted housing. I've been so poor and broke, I know the difference, and I'm grateful. I can appreciate it. I never put Marlon in a position that she has to pick up my underwear, because, like, who the fuck am I, man? I could have been a Marlon myself in a different life, right? And so I taught my whole family, like, pick your underwear up, put it in the hamper, pick your socks up, put it in the hamper. She's not your slave. She's a well-paid house manager, a maid. Take care of her, be good to her, talk to her, ask her how she's doing, ask her how her family is. And so I forced the immigrant edge on them because I didn't know if they innately had it or not. So I forced it on them. And today they're confident, they're cordial, they're hardworking, savages and servants, and I love that about them. So whether it's factory installed or not, to me it doesn't matter. I think you can take the dumbest person and develop them into a savage, because the human body and brain and spirit are very pliable. But when we don't mold it, it just becomes whatever the surroundings dictate it to become.
I really love that you've gone there, because it's one of the things that I'm very cognizant about. Is I live in a very privileged part of Sydney. I get to send my kids to some of the best schools. It's a different upbringing. I wasn't an immigrant, but it's a different upbringing to what I had. But at the same time, I want them to have the tenacity, the grit, that savagery about them.
Yeah.
And so you've engineered that for your kids. So just because you're having a different life, you're still going to develop those traits and those attributes, and this is how I'm going to create an environment as a parent so you can do so.
That's exactly right. That's exactly. And we know what's neat is my son is 18 years old now. He turns 19 soon. He's got a beautiful girlfriend, and the girlfriend and the family invited them on a ski trip to Utah. And now remember, he's used to going on trips with us as a family. So this was his first trip with their family, and they're just good, regular, awesome humans. But it was many of them living in one little hotel room. And my son is texting me like, Dad, first of all, it's not a suite. And he's realizing this. He goes, secondly, I realize I'm sleeping on the floor. Thirdly, I realize we're looking at the prices on the menu. Fourthly, I realize that we were all packed into the car instead of just flying out, because it was cheaper for them to drive from California to Utah than to fly, right? He goes, this was everything that you've taught me. And I love that he's getting the human experience, because he's realizing, because look, they're out here with me. We're staying in a massive suite at the Four Seasons that has 3 bedrooms. We have a concierge that comes and knocks on our door and brings us beverages every morning. They take us to the 32nd floor. That's like this VIP room. And so as we were having breakfast this morning, I go, hey, do you remember a few months ago in Utah, that little tight little corridor you slept in, and the weird little foods you guys were eating, and they had packaged up food and brought it from home because it's cheaper than, the one dinner a day that you guys were getting? Yeah, this is better, isn't it? Yeah, Dad, it is. Make sure you earn this life for yourself, and then teach your kids to earn this life. And it's important, man, and I want everyone to have the life that I have. But at some point, like you said, you have to build the grit, the tenacity, the hunger. If you don't organically have it, then you better have someone coach you and mentor you to develop it.
Yeah, and it's great that in Andrew there, he was, a lot of people who have grown up around privilege, they may be conditioned to it and like, I don't want to do this, but rather you prepared him accordingly and said, hey, this is how we live. But if you don't work hard, if you don't deliver value, then, that's the other side as well.
Yeah. I mean, simple as that. Like, solve problems and deliver value in exchange for money. And if you decide to not solve problems and deliver value in exchange for money, then you will just be a working stiff, and you will just trade your life's time. Like, think about what we do when you go, oh yeah, I make a salary of whatever, $80,000 a year, or I get $30 an hour. And I have to remind people, so you're going to sell hours and minutes of your life for a quantifiable dollar amount so that you can have 1.5, 2 days off on a week? Yeah. And I say it in a way that it hurts, that it just creates a little sting. And they go, well, what else can I do? I said, well, the more value you add, the more problems you solve, you become a better asset to humanity instead of a liability, and you can command more money, and you could eventually start making passive income because you can have employees and deploy them out there to do things while you're out there doing other things. And people have this awakening. Like, that's what I believe my job is to do here in Australia. Like, we're now on our third city today, Sydney. So in Melbourne, at Rise to Greatness, we had something like 200 people. We had 400 people yesterday at Brisbane at Rise to Greatness, and we've got just over 600 people here in Sydney in terms of audience. The audience is hungry. They want to break out of mediocrity. They know they're tired of celebrating mediocrity. They know this cultural inertia that they're stuck in keeps them there. While they want to break out, they don't know how, and they're afraid to because, when you stick out, you get hammered.
Yep.
And in a culture like here, the culture is designed to keep everybody...
Oh, it's tall poppy syndrome. If you put your head up, someone will definitely take a swing at you and get you down very, very quickly.
There you go.
Yeah. It's part of the cultural norm.
Yeah.
And
that's unfortunate.
It is.
And until a voice comes in from the outside and says, here's another option, and it's okay to get knocked down. It's okay to be different. It's okay to feel like the black sheep. It's okay to know that you were built different. And I could just see people sitting up taller because they were like, holy shit, he's saying everything that's in my head. I feel like the black sheep. I feel like I'm meant for more. I feel the gnawing of greatness in my gut. Look, if you paid for a ticket to be in an audience like this, or to be in an audience like the events that you run, you're obviously different. We run these events on weekends. Most people want to just party and fuck off on weekends. And then we're running events and we're asking them to pay to sit there and learn. So if you're part of the 1% that's willing to pay money to sit there and learn, yeah, you're different. You're gonna be misunderstood by your family, your friends, by the community. They're gonna think you're weird, you're greedy, you're selfish. How dare you? Why are we not good enough? Are you trying to be somebody else, trying to be a successful American? Maybe I am, and maybe I've got a message in my head and my heart that I need to share with the world. And the only way I can do that is by building an audience, building a brand, and standing out. But you will get hammered.
You will. You will. I want to talk about your relationship with money because you grew up in Section 8 housing.
Yep.
You tell an incredibly moving story when you had nits and your mum washed your hair.
Yeah. Is that what you guys call lice?
Lice, yeah.
Nits?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, you went into dumpsters for food, right? And so a lot of people growing up around just that kind of poverty end up with a negative relationship with money. They end up having this real scarce relationship, like they don't deserve it.
Yeah.
Right? But that's not you. You have this
not anymore
mindset.
Yeah.
Not anymore. So how have you gone from that, having that poor relationship with money, that scarcity mindset, into this abundant mindset where I can make as much as I want because all it is a scorecard for the value that I am delivering out in the world?
Exactly. For me, it was simple. In that I had a poor dad and a rich dad. I literally feel like that Robert Kiyosaki book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, My dad, who chose to be so brave and escape and bring us to the United States, he was my poor dad. He's my dad. I love him to pieces. Very brave, took a risk and brought us to the United States. However, he believed that you trade your time for dollars, because that's just the world he came from, right? You know, you can develop a trade. In his case, he's a tailor, and if he can sew your pants and change a button and, you know, alter your suit, however many hours it takes him, that's what he's going to charge you. So he spent time for dollars. That's how he made his money. And so he told me, like, hey, make sure you go and get a good job here in America, because it's the country of opportunity. Get yourself a good job, a good paying job. It'll come with health benefits, maybe some kind of a 401k or a retirement fund. And over time, you'll move up in that job, and that's that. Okay, that makes sense. And I got a few jobs as a young man. But as I became a personal trainer, unbeknownst to me, you know this, when you're a personal trainer, especially doing one-on-one personal training, the people who can afford you, they are financially well off.
Oh, they were my best business coaches when I was starting out.
So I realized very quickly, as I got my first 3 coaching personal training clients, I've got built-in mentors. Like, these people have an obscene amount of money because they're paying the gym $800 a month to work out with me twice a week, right? $800 a month, that was my rent, right? And they're paying the gym this kind of money. And they're coming at 1 in the afternoon, 2 in the afternoon. And so I started asking, one of them was Jim Franco, who I talk about in my book. So I was 23 years old, and Jim Franco was 62 years old. And I said, Jim, how is it that you show up with different cars? Every time I see you pulling up to this LA Fitness, you show up with a different car. One's nicer than the next. You show up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Don't you have a job? He goes, yeah, I have a job. I work from 8 o'clock to 1:30 in the afternoon. And then I come here and I get my workout with you. And then I go home and I have the rest of the day to myself. What kind of work do you do? He goes, I own a company. I go, well, what do you do? Software. He goes, I make a little bit of money from a lot of people. Well, tell me more. He goes, we develop software. The software adds value to these businesses in the automotive industry, and they pay us $99 a month. And I've got tens of thousands of customers nationwide who pay $99 a month for our software to run their automotive company. Dude, I was blown away. I'm like, so you're not actively doing anything? He goes, no, I lead the people run my company.
That would have just opened a whole new world for you, because what you'd been exposed to was you work hard, you get an hourly rate, and that's what you're going to do the rest of your life. And then all of a sudden you said, no, a different world exists to you at this point in time.
I was so naive that when he said, you can have as many cars as you want. Because I said, dude, you drove an Escalade here yesterday. Last week you drove like this classic, beautiful Mercedes. Now you've got this, like, he had a classic American 1970 Chevelle, which I loved. I go, how many cars do you have? He goes, kid, you can have as many cars as you want. And that blew my mind. I thought, like, one human, one car. That's how it's supposed to be. Just like I thought, one human, one apartment. I didn't even realize I could own a house, let alone multiple houses, right? And so he opened my eyes to so many things, man. It just blew me away. Yet when I think about how my dad raised me, it was work hard, trade your time for dollars, be good at what you do. People will refer more business to you, or, you know, your employer will keep you, and you do well, you'll get raises, etc. But I also remember seeing my dad, in Armenian, he would say, we keep running out of money before we run out of month. Meaning at the end of the month, we didn't have enough money, especially when we first moved to America. We didn't have enough money to pay for the water bill, the gas bill, and the electric bill. So he always had to make a decision. So there's plenty of times that I remember at the end of the month, there was 3-4 days in a row that we lived in darkness. Once the sun went down, it was dark. My mom would put out candles because we didn't pay the electric bill so that we could have gas and water, right? And I remember thinking, man, money must be really hard to come by. Because when you constantly hear your dad saying...
You're running out of it all the time.
Right.
It's scarce.
Yeah, and that's your dad. And so everything your dad says must be true. And so I grew up with this mentality that money is hard to come by. Money's for the rich. Money must be for Americans who were born here or there, right? Not necessarily for an immigrant. Money must be for people who have gone to university. Money must be for people who have this magical intelligence that I obviously don't have. So I had all these false belief systems about money, until I became a personal trainer, making $12 an hour, still trading my time for dollars, because they weren't paying me $800 a month, they were paying the gym. The only difference was, it was the first time I was exposed to millionaires. And they go, how much do you get paid? $12 an hour. Why don't you open up your own gym? I could open up a gym? Yeah, you're a great personal trainer, you can open up a gym. And one of them said, I'll even loan you the money. You will? He goes, yeah, I'll be your business partner. He goes, you're going to put in sweat equity. I go, what is sweat equity? I don't know these terms, right? He goes, well, I'm putting in money, and that's the work I'm putting in. I'm not going to do any more work other than advising you. You're going to do the work. You're going to work harder than you ever have to run the business that you own 50% of, because I own the other half, and I'm going to tell you what to do, and you're going to do it. He goes, that's putting my money to work. And if we do this right, you're going to grow my money, and you're going to grow your money as well. Next thing I know, I'm opening up location 2, and 3, and 4, and 5. Dude, I was blown away. That simple concept of I could be an entrepreneur. I always knew I was unemployable. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I never had the belief system in myself that I could actually deploy and do it, until Jim Franco was like, you can absolutely do this. And he took what in my head was so complex and even overwhelming, to be honest with you, the idea of being an entrepreneur, a leader, a marketer, a salesman, because I knew what it entailed, and I wasn't afraid of hard work. But I'm like, there's all these skills I don't have. He goes, you can develop them. And he starts bringing me books. Zig Ziglar, Tom Hopkins, Jay Abraham, Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins. And I'm learning from people that I'd never even heard of before. Then he starts bringing me audio cassettes, right? The Psychology of Selling by Brian Tracy. It was like 1, 2, 3, 8 cassettes. And back then there was no MP3 players or whatever, iTunes. And so I remember I'd fall asleep at night with the headphones on, and the cord would be wrapped around my throat by the time I wake up. And I didn't realize that you can be trained to do anything you want. Like recently, 10 years ago, I decided I was going to do a 6-week challenge and become a marathon runner. And my whole life I told myself that God's made me big and muscular, and I've designed to lift weights and put them down. And so when people say, hey, you want to go on a run? No, thank you. I'm not made to run. We start kind of putting ourselves like, I'm not made to run. I don't remember names well. I'm not good with money. I don't understand money. Well, I learned to run in 6 weeks, and I ran a fucking marathon, bro. Like, it was crazy. I'm crossing the finish line. It was painful. It was difficult. I crossed the finish line. I broke down crying because I told myself that I can't run a mile, let alone 26.2 miles. And all in 6 weeks, I conditioned my body to do that. And so once I realized through the help of Jim Franco how pliable we are, and that we can change our association with money, our association with food, our association in a bad relationship, you can become whoever you want. But again, it goes back to killing that old version to give birth to the new version.
Well, you had a lot of limiting beliefs at that, and untrue
Massively,
beliefs.
yeah.
So you have to be American to make money. You have to have a college degree, and then you had to replace them with empowering beliefs. And similar, I know that you share that marathon story. You've got a marathon plan that you give out. So again, people can break down an identity that they have of themselves and replace it with an actuality, something that is empowering.
Yeah.
I want to talk about leadership, because this book here, Man Up, I love it so much. I bought 100 copies of it. I gifted it to all my coaching clients.
Thank you so much.
And for me, it's one of the best books I've ever read on leadership. Now, you say something in there that is very, very profound. You say leadership is always the problem, and leadership is always the solution.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
That's a term that I learned from John Maxwell.
Yep.
And I think he said it in a different way, but it boils down to the leadership is always the problem, leadership is always a solution, which goes back to self-awareness, as we talked about earlier. It's easy to point to an employee and go, they screwed that up. They didn't do that right. The P&L report is off, or they didn't make the website right. They screwed it up. God, I wish I could have a better employee. I wish they could. Okay, let's take it internal. I'm the leader. If that's the only person that I have, I could never hire another employee. Can I make do with that person? Absolutely. Absolutely. And one of my friends, he's a Marine. His name is Steve Eckhart. He's our head instructor for the project. He said, the Marine Corps, unlike the other 3 branches of the military, the Marine Corps never turns anyone away. He goes, the Marine Corps is so dialed in. They're so precise in the way they train people that you could be mentally slower, you could be physically ungifted, and they will make every Marine into a marksman, because that's the whole model. It doesn't matter if you're going to be a pencil pusher once you become like your actual job in the Marine Corps, or if you're going to be working in the kitchen flipping burgers. Every Marine apparently is a marksman with a rifle. The fact that they can take every single type of human that comes through, dumb, dopey, degenerate, and make them into a marksman, Can't I take a human as a leader and lead them so well, communicate so well, transfer information so well, hold them accountable so well that they can eventually become good at what they do? And so to me, leadership is always the problem. Leadership is a solution. If I become a level 8 or 9 leader, I can hire someone who's a 8 or 9 employee. But if the leader is a 6 or 7, 6 or 7s cannot hire 8s and 9s. It just doesn't work that way. In fact, a lower level leader is threatened by someone who's got light behind their eyes, who's got this tenacity. They're almost like, you're going to be too much for me, subconsciously. And so I share this with you because leadership is the problem, leadership is the solution. Before you go and fire someone, right, consider asking yourself, what am I doing wrong with this person? How could I do better? Have I communicated my expectations clearly? Have I given them KPIs, key performance indicators to hit? I didn't know about any of these things, man. And so I would just get frustrated with them. I'd give them poor direction, poor expectations, wouldn't give them KPIs and deadlines. And then when they didn't meet my mind's expectation, because I somehow expected them to be a mind reader, and they didn't read my mind's expectations, I'd get frustrated and eventually fire them. And when I read that leadership is the problem, leadership is the solution, I took that to heart and I fixed the leader by becoming a better visionary, better mission planner, better communicator, setting expectations, asking for deadlines, and then setting KPIs for them so they know what winning looks like. Now, anyone we hire at HQ somehow ends up becoming a miraculously awesome team member. Is it because we're so great at hiring, or are we so great at developing? I say it's the latter.
You develop those marksmen. Yeah, but it had to start again. It wasn't looking outward, it was looking inward.
Yeah, it's always an internal locus of control.
Yeah. We talked a little bit about personal brand before now. I want to cover that because I've seen your brand really explode over the last few years in particular. What do you attribute that to?
Over the last few years especially, post-pandemic, I felt probably early 2021, because you probably remember, you've been following me for a long time. Craig and I had the Empire Show.
Yeah, it was
right?
a great show.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and we would talk about entrepreneurship, and if it's not me and Craig talking about lessons in entrepreneurship, it's usually either Craig or myself interviewing another entrepreneur and kind of extracting the entrepreneurial wisdom from them. We did 4 years, 209 episodes, and I really enjoyed that. But as the pandemic hit, we stopped the Empire Show because Craig lived in Canada at the time and he wasn't able to fly down. It just wasn't going to work off Zoom, so we stopped the Empire Show. So now fast forward to mid-2021, and with all the drama happening worldwide, lockdowns, and I just found out that here in Australia, that if you had COVID, they would put you in some camp or something.
If you came from the States and you had COVID, you would have to be in quarantine in a hotel for a couple of weeks on your own. Even if you were flying in and you didn't have COVID, you'd have to be in quarantine.
And then I would also hear that locals who had COVID would have to pay $3,000 to be housed somewhere.
If they came in, and they would have to pay for those hotels.
It's ridiculous. And so as I saw these things happening and we're losing our human rights, basically it's an attack on human rights worldwide.
We were losing our freedom.
Absolutely. And so, man, I felt called like I need to start a different show where I don't interview anyone, that I just interview or just look down the barrel of the camera and speak my truth, right? Now, of course, it's easy when you're interviewing someone on the Empire Show because there's a little banter, right? You have time to think through your thoughts. If you're just looking down the camera and it's just you sharing what's up, if you say something stupid or you say something controversial or you say something that doesn't jive, the quality of that content is all on you, not on your guest. So for 6 months, I put it off. I'm like, I don't want to do this. But I felt like this gnawing in me, like God or the creator wants me to do this, right? So one day I went to Joan, my assistant. I'm like, Joan, we're going to start the BK show, the Bedros Keuilian show. She goes, who are you interviewing? Like, what's it about? I go, just myself looking down the barrel of the camera, 1 episode a week on YouTube and podcast platforms. I want a black background, gold lights, yellow lights. And boom, within 3 weeks, her and the team built out the studio and off we went. I believe that when we follow our radiance, and that was my radiance, that was Source talking to me and saying like, this is what your next path in life is. And oftentimes we hear Source talk to us And we go, no, this is scary. I don't want to do
You did
this.
that for 6 months.
Fuck yeah, I did. It was scary, man. Like, what are people going to think? What are my kids going to think when this thing takes off and I'm going to talk about stuff that I've never talked about before? Not about entrepreneurship. I'm going to talk about our freedoms, about human rights, about the oppressive governments worldwide. I'm going to talk about the responsibilities that we have as men and women to stand up against the government. We need to talk about, forget laws. You have to operate by your moral laws, right? Like, you have to have your own moral compass. I operate as an outlaw outside of the laws of what the system has created. I have my own principles, values, and moral laws that I operate by. And so, like, I'm about to share these things that I once kept inside with the world, and my kids might get laughed at school.
Yeah, but it's very conflicting to a lot of worldviews.
Yes, exactly. So, first episode, we knocked it out. It blew up and went viral. And I realized the world is hungry for this. This is why Source, God, the universe, was asking me to do this. And we all have that. Like, don't for a moment think that there's special people that the universe works through. I believe that as humans, we all have radiance within us. And I always describe it like this. Imagine this, you're born and you have this beautiful glowing light within you, right? This orb of light, glowing bright. This is why babies are curious. They're always curious, they're loud, they giggle, laugh, they just laugh out loud, they reach for things and they put it in their mouth and try it. They're not afraid of taking chances. But as we become adults and we grow up into teenagers and adults, it's like, hey, watch out, slow down. You're going to offend someone. Be careful. You might hurt yourself. You might hurt others. Don't do that. That's offensive. You know, what will people think? And so we slowly begin to dim our light of radiance. I believe that radiance is God or the universe talking through us, sending us a message. And we dim our radiance because we want to fit in. What did you call it? A tall
Poppy syndrome.
Tall poppy syndrome is exactly what it is. If you let your radiance shine, you're going to stand out.
That's right.
Amongst all these humans that have dull, dim lights.
Well, they've been conditioned.
Yes. And so we dim our own lights because we want to fit in, we don't want to stand out, etc. And so we come to this conclusion that, wait, I think I'm called to do something bigger and greater, so I'm going to shine my light. And so that's all I did, is I decided to undim my light and shine it and speak my truth into the camera. I didn't know how it was going to be received, and my brand began to blow up because people were hungry for the truth. I knew the truth within me. We all know the truth within us. It's undeniable, but we're all afraid to talk about the truth because we might offend people. It might be counter-culture at times, right? And we've been conditioned through social media, the government, school systems, the church to shush, blend in. And so I decided to just be myself authentically, and it blew up.
Now, one of the things is it's blown up. It's given you incredible opportunities to share this message. You're now sharing your light. But there's a flip side to that as well. Now you're putting yourself out there, and there's criticism, there's trolls, there's haters. There was
more than ever.
Yeah, I saw there was a post on your Instagram where you showcase the Modern Day Night program, and there was a whole bunch of negative feedback that comes with that. How do you deal with the other side?
I'm often reminded that Jesus, Gandhi, and Mother Teresa did a lot of good for this world. We could all agree on that.
Absolutely.
You can find blog posts, websites, YouTube channels dedicated to hating and shitting on Jesus, Mother Teresa, and Gandhi. They did a lot more work for this world, a lot more good for this world than I could ever do. So if they got hated on and shat on, who am I not to get shat on, right? So the moment you start doing good, evil forces will manipulate humans into shitting on you. Every time we run a project class, and we post videos of the most grueling evolutions we put these men through. By the way, it's 75 hours long.
They take it out of context,
yeah,
right?
We probably put 9 minutes of content out over 75 hours.
They make judgments.
Yeah. And of course, these are all big-time content creators on YouTube, Fox News, CNN. Like, they can't reach out to me and say, hey, do you really drag people by their ruck packs and throw them into the lake? Is that what you're doing for 75 hours? Are you really having them army crawl over railroad tracks for 75 hours? Are you really trying to drown them in an ice bath for 75 hours? And the answer would be no. In fact, here's some footage that shows they're crying, they're sharing, they're connecting as men for once. They have what they feel like is a brotherhood. They're talking about the things that keep them awake at night. Many of these men talk about how they've thought about committing suicide, and now they have a new source of purpose in their life. They've decided that they're not going to drink, do drugs, cheat on their spouse anymore. Here's footage that contradicts what we put out there. That footage, that if we were to put that footage out there, it wouldn't go as viral. What goes viral is Steve taking out his K-bar off his side. He's the Marine, his knife, and he goes, I'll cut this tattoo off my hand if any of you think you're gonna make it to the graduation dinner if you don't belong there. I'm gonna make sure that you ring that bell and quit. He's putting on a show. Our job is to get control and compliance over these men, to break them down, to be able to rebuild them. Just like I said, I had to kill my old self to give birth to my new self. We have 75 hours to do this with these men. So I'm using the project as an example because of all the hate I get and controversy I get. 99.9% is from the project. There's literally people that go, I love what you do. They're on my coaching program. They do the Legacy Tribe coaching program. They come to my events, but I just don't understand the project. I just can't agree with the project. I go, would you like to come and just be an observer for a class? And they go, what do you mean? I go, better yet, look at these videos. Like, oh my God, you guys are saving men. But I see that you guys are dragging men and doing this. And yes, we are also doing that. We need to break them down. So all this to say that I realized very quickly, because look, I felt bad. I was like, they can't talk to me like that. They can't say this about me. Maybe I should stop the project. Maybe it's not meant to be. You come up with all these maybes. And then I realized a dear friend of mine said, look, Mother Teresa, Gandhi, and Jesus have done so much more for this world than you'll ever do. Because he's very brutally honest, this friend of mine. He goes, they've done more for this world than you'll ever do. There's web pages, Wikipedia pages, YouTube channels dedicated to hating on them, saying that they're fake, they're phonies, that they had an evil intent. Who are you to not be hated? And I realized in that moment, the more good I do, the more I'll be hated. The hate seems to stand out to us more than the love. When I come to an event like this and I see 600 people who are thanking me for flying across the ocean, coming to Australia, and they're telling me how my podcast saved their life, saved their marriage, saved their relationships, helped them make more money, helped them get out of depression, I realize I don't hear these voices. Not because it's not out there. We just discount it. Oh, someone sent me a DM and said, thank you, you've changed my life. Okay, great. But then someone making a YouTube show about how the project is the worst thing ever and the people that run it are grifters and all these, I've learned new words, things like grifters and all these things, right? For some reason, I will lock onto that, the hate, instead of all the love that I get, at least the old version of me. So here we are now 5 years into the project. I can give two shits. Now I intentionally put up the most polarizing videos when we're running the project, because even though they hate on us, some people watching actually go, I could see the beauty in this. I could see how this is healing. We get more people signing up for the project for the next class because of all the hate. So when Fox News, CNN, and all these big YouTube content creators put up, and they say the funniest shit. They go, oh, look at that. They're in the back of Walmart, the equivalent of, let's say, Woolworth. These guys are in the back of Woolworth acting like Navy SEALs and trying to beat these guys up. They're all probably grifters anyway. When really, two of my instructors are Navy SEAls, two of them are Marines. The two Navy SEAls are from combat SEAls. One of the Marines is a combat Marine. And then, of course, then there's me as the entrepreneur, and I just teach the entrepreneurial part. I'm not there giving down the beating because I'm more of a lover than a fighter. I'll give them a verbal tongue lashing, but I'm not going to drag you into the lake and hold your head down into the thing. And what they don't realize is there's medics all around us. Everything is tested and prepared. It is controlled chaos that we have. It's not just some crazy dudes going bonkers on a group of men, right? I mean, that would be very, very litigious if that's what we did for 5 years.
I like that reframe, though, is that you can't have the impact, you can't have the transformation, you can't have the movement that you have without receiving some reciprocal hate.
Right.
And so that reciprocal hate is just really it's a speck of sand. Really. It's just a tiny little road bump.
You know what it's like? I'm going to tell you what it's like. I'm so glad you said speck of sand. You go to the beach, you're laying on the sand, you bury your toes in it. It feels so good. All that sand feels so good around you. It's radiating heat back to your body. But then a little bit of wind kicks up, and one speck of sand goes in your eye. You're laying on sand. It feels so good. You're connecting with earth, yet the only sand you can really feel is that one speck of sand in your eye. That's what it's like.
I love that. I'm cognizant of time as well, Bedros. I've loved this conversation. I want to finish with one last question. What is the best piece of advice you have ever been given or received?
The best piece of advice that I've ever been given or received. Two pieces of advice. Nobody will remember this mistake. I used to think that like this is like a scar on me that's going to stick. And actually, Jim Franco told me this because when Bill Clinton, while married and while the president of the United States, had oral sex from a intern who was obviously not his wife, and look how forgiving the entire country was to him. The entire world was, right? So this too shall pass. Great piece of advice. Because then if I keep questioning, is this going to work? Is this not going to work? What will people think? Look, I'm going to go out there with my best of intentions, and I'm going to try and make it work. I'm not going to try and make something go wrong. But if it goes wrong, I've been taught that this too shall pass, and people are very forgiving. It won't be remembered. The other piece of advice that has been transformational in my life is what Jim Franco said, which is what I shared with you earlier, which is your job is to make a little bit of money from a lot of people. That has been transformational in my businesses across my life. I've helped more causes, charities, churches. I've helped a young lady get a new heart when her family wasn't able to raise enough money for a heart transplant for her. All because Jim Franco taught me how to get a little bit of money from a lot of people. I own 7 companies. 6 of my companies all have monthly recurring revenue. Some in the hundreds of thousands per month, some in the millions per month. And that feels really good, that I can wake up the first of every month and know that we have millions of dollars scheduled to come in. And which reminds me that 1, I can serve my family at the highest level, and 2, I can serve the charities and causes that I believe in at the highest level.
Bedros, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you.
You've been so generous with your time, generous with your words and your wisdom. I know that your purpose is here to serve humanity, and I feel in the short time that we've had together, you've certainly done that. So thank you.
That means a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, Bedros.